Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are here to do a panel on the virtual backlot, Filmmaking Evolved. My name is Chris Bereder. I'm the CEO of Halon Entertainment, and I have brought together a very talented bunch of people today to talk about the processes around virtual production, specifically previz, postviz, techviz, virtual art department, motion capture, virtual camera, the components that get assembled to produce a successful virtual production shoot. And everybody here on this panel is an expert in those processes and has been doing this for many years. And I thought it might be interesting to hear their take on some of those lesser known processes. So actually, I'll just let everybody introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Brad Alexander. I am a co-founder and visualization supervisor for Halon Entertainment.
I'm Grant Olin, and I'm a previz supervisor and cinematic supervisor at Halon.
Kenny DiGiordano. I'm a visualization supervisor, VAD supervisor, cinematic supervisor. Currently even just working on one with Grant where we're kind of co-souping some stuff and having a lot of fun with it.
Jess Marley, VAD supervisor. Been in Halon for, I guess, almost 6 years now. I've worked on a variety of projects, starting as a generalist, but kind of have worked my way into the asset and virtual art department side of things.
My name is Kristen Turnipseed. I am a real-time stage supervisor here at Halon, and I'm helping to run and build our virtual camera tools from what they used to be in the past to what they are today.
Thank you, guys. I think collectively, you've probably been involved in the production of around 100 feature films. That might even be an understatement. And Brad, you were there pretty much at the dawn of previz. So maybe you could speak a little bit about generally what that process is and how it's used to both inform the creative and then inform practical set construction, virtual art department.
Yeah, it's come a long way since 2000. When we started on Star Wars, George Lucas was using Videomatics, and he would cut different parts of old airplane movies to get the point across. And then we finally got access to some really good software that allowed us to animate these shots and get the camera in the right spot, get the ships in the right spot, get the animation in the right spot. And then it evolved into more storytelling with characters. Without motion capture, without anything, we were just using hand-keyed animation and basically telling the story with our animation skills as best we could with the software that was available.
What do you think is the key difference between previz now and previz then?
I think previz then was very primitive. Previz now is very complex, depending on how far you want to take it. There's multiple levels you can take it. After we had finished Star Wars and we had moved to LA, I started working at Avatar, and they had an extremely complex virtual camera system with over 100 motion capture cameras. At any given time, there were like 8, God cameras looking down on where the subjects were. Everything was markered. After that, we kind of took the knowledge that we learned from that and we simplified it so that we didn't have to have 100 cameras on the wall or all these markers on everything. And us as supervisors, I think most of us has put the suit on and run around in the volume at our office and acted out many a sequence. So once that occurs, you kind of get rid of the animation element. I mean, I wouldn't say completely because you're going to have to do hard surface stuff, but the character stuff is usually the most difficult. And once you get the natural movement of characters down, working with a good camera that feels like it's handheld, you get something that relates to the viewer, I think.
So with virtual production, you're getting a big shift in the way that films are planned. Jess, could you tell me a little bit about what VAD or virtual art department is and its purpose on a production?
Yeah. Virtual art department has a lot of different facets to it. It can be anything from doing the location via Google Scans and Google Images to and recreating a set for a director to go scout and find out if he likes that location, to the creation of assets and really anything you're going to see on stage or in previz that we we've done for so long. And so it kind of spans a lot of those things. On Batman, we used it a bunch to, like I was saying, as being in California when most of the shooting is going to take place in the UK, and being able to scout those locations and kind of getting those dimensions and those measurements and lighting those as if they're a nighttime set for the director to kind of, be boots on the ground, or, be on the crane at whatever height he's going to be on, and kind of see the shot before he gets there. And then he can kind of make decisions on also what's going to be a set extension or anything else along those lines. And so we would build anything for those assets that you're going to see in camera, but the camera is a totally different beast. Another thing that Matt Reeves really liked doing was putting on the headset and being on set. So we'd have the Unreal set waiting for him to put on the VR goggles to get a sense of where the lighting is going to be coming from, and where, this explosion may happen, and how he's going to shoot it. And so, before the day of shooting, you go to, this has very much happened on Apes too, you pretty much had a blueprint before ever even setting foot on set that day. It's come a long way from even just previzing out to letting the director really take the reins and be able to see it, firsthand before he gets there.
Kristen, you worked on that show, The Batman. What was that process like working with Matt on the virtual camera?
Yeah, this was kind of in our early days of our building blocks of virtual camera, and it was a lot of exploring and figuring out processes and what works and what doesn't work. So as Jess was mentioning, really anything that you see in camera is built by our virtual art department. Once those are ready, we end up taking those and just utilizing them however a director or a creative person needs. If they want to see how an environment feels to them and they kind of want to stage out what their action is going to be, if they want to, kind of just see the action going. We were able to, specifically on the Batman, take live actor motion capture and pipe that into Unreal. So the director was able to actually see their characters moving around inside the environment live while the stunt actors were there in motion capture suits on the stage with the director. So he was able to direct their action and see it reflected in his environment as those characters via Unreal. It really is the foundation for everything that we're doing today. We've taken what we did then and we've built it into something quite a bit larger, which is very exciting. But it was really cool to see this really kind of come to life and help the director kind of see what works, what doesn't work. And then even after capture, we're still able to take those performances and move them around in the environment as the environment is still continuing to be molded and shaped into what you'll see on screen.
It's interesting. That's quite a bit different from I guess, the process that Brad, you would have gone through many years ago in the first iteration of our virtual camera.
Yeah, our first iteration was, it was pretty primitive. We went from 8 cameras that were mobile that didn't have quite as much fidelity, with that coming from Avatar where they had hundreds of cameras and, everything was precise from facial tracking to getting everything they needed from reference cameras and time codes synced up. And then now that the cameras have improved, the fidelity's improved, we have more cameras now. So we're able to cover, a lot more ground. It shows through the years and especially through the projects as we've sort of evolved. On Call of the Wild, we had basically, we had previz the entire show and we got it launched and then we had to shoot it. And they were like, how are we going to shoot it? And then DP got involved and it was like, all right, well, now we have to stick to these specific cranes, these jibs, these control, like these rigs basically, so that we could actually record the motion. And what we did is we ended up laying out sheets that were dimensions. And it was, here's where your camera starts, here's where it ends. We had it in feet. We had everything down to the lens as far as where the camera lens started. If there was a zoom, we had that recorded so they know what was going on with the zoom. We had to film back the same previz as we did on their Alexa camera that they shot on. So they knew what they were getting exactly on set once we delivered it to them. So it's good.
Grant, you've had some crossover with Simulcam. You want to tell us a little bit about what that is?
The Soderbergh movie Laundromat, where we were using an NCAM system, working with those guys, and we did scans of a couple sets, and then we assembled it into a virtual version of Joshua Tree, of a nightclub in England, of a beach. And the purpose of it was to have Gary Oldman and Antonio Banderas, they're kind of walking through these different virtual environments, talking about different economic scams in the world, kind of like a tour through these different universes. And it's meant to be this kind of stylized otherworldly thing. Soderbergh and the NCAM guys to get that all set up so that Steven could film live on the day, operating the camera, and see the composites as he's operating the shots.
There's also a service that we use quite a bit, that a lot of productions use quite a bit, which is Techviz. And Techviz, I think, can be a lot of different things, but generally it's determining what you need to do to shoot it practically on the day.
Did a lot of work for Free Guy figuring out how to, reverse engineer camera movement onto different rigs to make it look like a car's driving, or make the camera fly around a character like a video game camera. Complicated robotic work that traditionally cameras can't do, kind of create the feel of a fake video game environment. We would do light studies, we would location scout in the computer. There were days where I was going out on set to check our computer measurements against the location we're going to film on next week, and start mapping out, exactly where robotic camera arm is going to be placed. Is there enough room to fit the camera's, feet on this little ledge of a step outside of this building? Then go back to the office and make little tweaks where maybe our CG set was an inch off or even half an inch off, because it was down to so precise, so that we weren't running the camera through Ryan Reynolds' head and killing him. We had to really take these extra precautions, mostly for safety, but also just for the sake of, is this location going to work? There are a few locations that they were going to shoot at, and after we did some Techviz and light studies, realized, these aren't going to work when we're going to film here. We need to come up with something different, or this street's going to be no good, but one block over is going to be perfect.
Yeah. We had to do that similar thing on Star Trek. J.J. Abrams would take us on his location scouts for different places where he was going to shoot. So one day he takes us to the Budweiser plant, and he takes us into the room where there's all these vats, and there's just all of these, they're literally catwalks that you have to get up and down to go around these things. And he was like, I'm going to do a shot here. I'm going to do a shot here. I'm going to do a shot here. And I'm like, I had to ask production. I'm like, can we get another day to come back to measure all this stuff? Because I'm going to need that so we can actually visualize it. And they were like, yeah, come on back. And so we got to go into all of that to Budweiser. It's crazy. It's 5 stories high, these huge vats and all these catwalks and stuff. It was crazy. And all that stuff in the end ended up tying into the film, and it helped them with their shoot.
Another thing that's interesting was on Logan, there's a car chase through the desert in the opening sequence. And how fast can you drive a limousine through a desert is a big question. It's not a paved road. There's bumps, there's bushes, there's a lot of things in the way. And so coordinating with the stunt supervisor to figure out, what's the max speed you can be on, and now what lens can we be on with how fast do you speed this up to make it look like you're going 60 when you can really only go about 20. And all those things come into play when you try and plan and figure things out. And if you don't do it right, it's not going to work the day of the shoot. You're also dealing with an 8-year-old who can only be on set for a minimal amount of time. And so you only have so many shoots that you're really going to be able to go and do this to before you're over budget fairly quickly on the first sequence of the film.
We did a lot of similar stuff to that when Mangold's next film on Ford versus Ferrari, where we had all the speeds plugged in of, this is how fast they would take this corner of Le Mans. This is how fast you'd this one. They'd be going around corners at 120 miles an hour in real life. But then for previz sake, we're figuring out, okay, well, realistically, the camera car and actors can't be doing 200 miles an hour safely. What speed looks like 200 miles an hour without being it, and mapping all of that out so that they could shoot it safely, but have it look like they're hauling ass.
I think a lot of people don't realize how dangerous film sets can be. How do you think Techviz changes as we move towards, stages that are largely LED volumes?
We had to do that on Avatar. We basically had to go right in on Jake's face, and we had to stop right at his eye. And when the robot would go down, it was all right, don't kill the main actor. But I think that's going to come into play with a lot of the productions that are doing right now, especially since everything's sort of keep your distance. There's not going to be a lot of people around you, but now I guess there's more robots, which I mean, I like robots, but but at the same time, we got to make sure they're safe.
I mean, you're hurtling a 60-pound camera fully loaded through the air. You don't really think about it, but just, shots in movies, you've got the camera flying right up into someone's face. And it's hard to do that safely.
How is Techviz changing with the movement towards shooting on LED walls? Kristen, I know you had an experience on a show where we were doing Techviz for an LED stage. So I'd be interested to hear how that went.
It was a really interesting project. We were working with some really young directors, some really very new people to the visual effects space. A lot of their work prior to working with us had been in less visual effects heavy content. And so for them, it was not only was it an exploratory and a very much of a learning experience in how to utilize and harness visual effects tools, both in our virtual art department, in previz, and with the LED walls, but it also gave us a chance to really explore how powerful Techviz and pre-planning can be for a production. For this one in particular, we were able to go in and show the directors not only what their environment looks like, but also give them a mock-up of this is the space you're going to have on stage. And these are kind of the parameters you're going to have to work inside as far as how far away from the stage your actors are going to be, and plot out where their cameras are going to need to be positioned within the physical space to get the shots that they wanted in the digital space. Specifically on this project, one of the things that I think that our whole team at Halon, myself, Jess, Brad, and everybody that worked on this project, one of our core focuses for this was also not only being able to bring the director's visions to their screen, but also really being able to work with our partners at Lux Machina to be able to hand them an environment that they were able to then manipulate on the stage on the day. We were managing all of the prep and planning and the assets, but ultimately to be able to run the LED wall, the folks over at Lux Machina were going to be the ones to run it. And so we had to make sure that our tools and their tools were coordinated and working well together. And I think that that was one of, a really big success of this project, was to be able to work within pipelines that involved not only ourselves, but also other vendors as well. And I think that we pulled that off, quite well. And the whole dance that was kind of done for this whole project was really to help, facilitate an early production during the middle of a pandemic. Everybody wants to continue to make movies, and this was really a project that was able to be brought together really with thinking about the safety of the people on set, the safety of the actors, and the timing and coordination of everything. So all of our planning, all of our scouting, all of our prep was done remotely. Our entire Halon team was able to stay off-site while still working very closely with the directors, closely with production, and closely with Lux Machina the entire time.
Specifically on ETC, Ripple Effect, we were in charge of getting all assets into the environment, building the lighting and the different times of day, and making them adaptable and flexible to be able to kind of set dress and build the world around where they were going to be shooting. And so a lot of things that go into that is, besides just building it to be a specific look, is also optimizing it to actually run at a certain speed on stage so that the camera doesn't lag and the walls can keep up with the actual physical camera that they're using to shoot with. And that is basically, using the engine. When you get into the nitty-gritty, it's basically just about reducing draw calls and reusing and recycling as much as you can in order to allow the system to speed up and be able to work with the camera. So it's everything that you're seeing in the background is created by us and art directed by the client or whoever is making the film.
So virtual scouting isn't necessarily just for viewing real world locations. There's other applications that a director would want to scout a digital set.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can think of two great applications for both of this. On ETC Ripple Effect, as we were helping the directors really kind of look through their environment and plan out their shots, we were able to do this through their camera using their lenses and film back. So as they're doing this, they're actually looking at the shots they're going to be able to achieve on the day, through with their characters kind of blocking these things in. And from that, we were able to pull back and achieve for them the bird's eye view of how to achieve those shots. So not only are they scouting out where they want to do their shots within the environment, they're also seeing it through the lens that they're going to be seeing their film. And this was, for an LED wall application. On a more recent example, the current project that I'm on, we definitely use the virtual camera to put it right in the director's hand. And this director is able to, walk through the environment, really get an idea for what's going to be seen, where, when, and the scale of everything. And as he's doing this, he's really able to kind of talk through some of the action that's going to be happening in this location, and kind of pop through lenses, looking through, again, the film back that they intend to use and the lens pack that they intend to use, with camera settings really dialed in. And he's able to really plan out some of these shots with the animators on the line. So the animators can then go and know that for this character, we might be shooting at this angle. And for the reverse, this is what we'd like to see. So when they go in and kind of plan out the previs, they really already have a solid idea of where and how the director is going to be shooting these segments, which really gives us a great jump for our previs department and gets us that much closer to what the creatives are really have in their mind.
We use GPS tools and timing to figure out what time and day they're going to be on a shoot in 3 months. And we know where the sun position is going to be and where it's going to set. And we can get accurate lighting, unless weather moves in. That's always that's always a factor. But as long as the weather doesn't move in, you got your sun position. So it's kind of cool.
There's no weather on an LED stage, and it's always magic hour, Brad.
That's true. That's true.
To that point, like where technology has been able to take us, simply using something like Google Earth to scout a location. A good example of this is we were working on, the new Batman, and, we were in California, but they were going to be shooting, all these sequences in the UK. And so we couldn't send somebody over right away to go do this, especially now during COVID times. You can't send somebody to all these places to do all this stuff. So we would, using photogrammetry, we would actually scan from Google Earth all the photos that we took and rebuild, let's say, a series of city streets and piece them together from multiple different places in the UK that they had kind of scouted to say, we'd like to test this out, we'd like to test this out. And then we would basically rebuild that geometry, flatten some of the roads, based off some actual visuals from the ground, and rebuild it for them to actually previs. And so really just revolutionizing the time and money spent to go and scout and block things off and check things out and make decisions early on in the process without having to ever, put boots on the ground, as they say.
Grant, you guys are using virtual production in an interesting way on a project you're on right now. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, it's definitely different than the norm for virtual production, which is usually a tool used for more physical production with a normal crew on set. What we're doing is using virtual production to feed animation and using it as a process that's more iterative and improvisational. So we'll do mocap as many times as 2-3 times a week. We will start with a basic script, do some quick storyboards, and then go start diving into mocap and work with, usually we've been working with the stage operator at Epic, who, because of COVID, runs the machines and is in the suit. This guy named Jerry, who's awesome and willing to constantly beat himself up for us and run all over. But yeah, we'll sit down with him and the cinematic directors at Epic and kind of just come up with ideas for the action, have Jerry act out as many different ideas that we have, build a big backlog of takes, and then drop them in and see what sticks. And when something isn't working, once you assemble it into a cut, we'll go back and we'll capture again instead of diving straight into animation to try to address a different blocking or a different performance idea. And the fun thing with it is it lets us really iterate performance quickly, try different performance ideas without getting stuck, polishing animation only to realize that, there's probably a better idea out there. So we can really search for the best performance.
What's the typical turnaround time on that process? From the time an idea is initiated to the time you're releasing that final animation?
It's varied a lot depending on the length of the spot. It's somewhere between about a month and 10-12 weeks. I mean, some of the spots we've done, like Street Fighter, for example, that had a little over a month, but it's so short. That was a 10-second long spot about.
The Street Fighter spot was very close to my heart. I grew up a huge Street Fighter 2 fan.
That one was super fun. Yeah.
It was interesting. It was a mix of 3D animation and 2D animation, right?
Yeah, we got to kind of step out of our comfort zone and initially the base concept that we were pitched as a script, it was going to be a CG character coming into Street Fighter. And as soon as we started boarding it, we were like, we've got to try to make a Street Fighter version of Jonesy and put him in there and do our best to create something that feels like it belongs in Street Fighter 2. And then from there, reveal pulling Ryu and Chun-Li into Fortnite. So we got all of the original sprites from Capcom and, started there, built out as much animation as we could, repurposing blocks as reacts or other poses that we could find in their sprite sheets, and then filled in the gaps with custom made sprite sheets to get the performance we needed that never existed in Street Fighter, and obviously designing a Street Fighter version of Jonesy as well.
That's very, very different, I think, than what we think of right now with virtual production, which is a lot of in-camera composites, which is it's allowing you to visualize on the day what's going to end up in the camera lens, and you may be capturing that, or you might not be capturing that. Kenny, of course, crossed over in probably the most public example. Maybe go into a little bit of detail on exactly what the job was and what that decision-making pipeline looked like.
Yeah, so the stuff that we got to do in Mandalorian, it all started in the art department. We were basically just an extension of the art department. So we were the virtual art department, otherwise known as VAD. The, responsibilities that we had were basically to work with, production designers and set deck to bring the background, to life. There wasn't really much stuff in the foreground, although we recreated everything that was in the foreground so that way we can actually put that into the background. But, working with, like I said, the art department, we have plans, we have a specific set of, measurements that we have to, continue to make sure that they match the real world stuff, I guess you could say. So removable walls and things like that, had to be recreated digitally. And sometimes there was a lot of back and forth even between us and the physical art department, I should say, because, we've designed a look in 3D that maybe is the more desired look that they're going for. So sometimes we had an artist that would pump out a really cool, material and texture that just felt right for the world. And now all of a sudden the art department is trying to match that because it felt more right than something that they've seen previously. The work that Andrew Jones, he really pushed us, and the use of Unreal Engine, is the key to all of this. The realistic, look that Unreal provides, almost straight out of the box, when you have a few talented artists that can, put some textures and materials on some objects, and all of a sudden it does look photoreal. There's just so much to think about, and so many different processes that are involved because there's so much collaboration, I guess you could say, between everything. The other really cool thing was the photogrammetry, aspect of everything, to where in the Mandalorian, there's always these crates that are in the background and all these miscellaneous boxes and things like that. So we can actually just take hundreds and thousands of photos of these objects and turn around and put that into software that helps recreate that using a point cloud. And then you can reproject all that stuff back onto geometry that's just more efficient, not as taxing on the machines. It's optimized for being able to actually be projected on the wall and not, be too taxing on the systems that are controlling, this huge volume, this almost 360 volume that's going around you.
All these processes that we're talking about are really utilizing a real-time engine at their core in each of these situations. Of course, we're talking about Unreal Engine. Do you guys see this as the starting point for a convergence of media, convergence of film, games, VR experiences, whatever?
I think it's already taken place. I did a WonderCon panel on Halon years ago, and I think it was like 10 years ago. And they asked us, what do you think the future is? And I said, I think video games are kind of where everything's headed. And if you look now, most of all of our previz is in now an engine, unless requested otherwise by client.
The way that films are made and TV and commercials, all the way down to, video games and cinematics, the processes are really no longer very different. Those lines are very much getting blurred. And I think that that's a great thing. I mean, in the early days of utilizing, Unreal for, film visualization, there was a little bit of push and pull, and it was somewhat of making, kind of getting a, square peg to fit in a round hole. But, the people at Epic had, worked with us and wanted to know how we were using it so that they could help make a tool that we could more easily utilize, because they saw how powerful what we were doing with Unreal was for the industry. And they saw the potential that we had picked up on very early on, and decided to really help build out a lot of that tool set. And because of that now, even today I'm using a video game controller to, help a director make a feature film. And it's, the tool set is really quite similar regardless of what medium you're making. And I think it's kind of been in the background, maybe, behind what everyone sees on the screen. It's kind of been that way for a while, and it's been heading towards that. And the cool thing is that a lot of the tools that we're using now and a lot of the processes that we're using now, we're already really kind of formulating and fermenting for a while before this. I feel that COVID has really kind of, accelerated maybe the timeline and the acceptance by a lot of our clients on some of these tools and processes, probably out of necessity, because these are tools that allow us to help them plan with few people, on location. Really, it's the bare minimum of people on location, and especially early in the process of any, video game, film, commercial, TV show. You hardly need anyone at all because everyone's able to collaborate digitally. And tools that we're using in Unreal really help facilitate this. And so I think a lot of this has been fermenting in the background. For some of us, now that we're getting to actually use these tools and practice with them every day, that aspect of this whole thing has been exciting, because these are tools that we've been excited about for some time. And we're really hoping everyone would accept them. And now there's a need for them. And we get to play with these fun tools that really are very powerful and have really advanced how content is created for everyone to enjoy at home, because we're all stuck at home. So who doesn't need more content?
It was an uphill battle for a while, I think, trying to convince studios and filmmakers that some of these tools could be helpful. And I think any change in any process represents risk. And risk is not something you want when you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a feature. I think we knew that this would work. But you're right. I think it would have taken another 5, 6, 7 years for the industry to really come around. And then COVID came, and it was just like that, overnight, out of necessity. And I don't think we'll go back to the way it was. I'm interested in your takes on what's next, but I can't imagine a scenario where we go back, because I think through this process, we have, not us as Halon, but just the industry and people working in virtual production have proved out that it is a much more cost-effective way to work when it's used properly. But on that, I'd like to know, what do you guys think is next in filmmaking? What processes are we going to see revolutionize the way movies are made over the next 5 years?
I think we're going to take what we've learned from our working from home experience. If in the next year everything starts to get back to normal and film shoots start happening and we start getting more integrated into live action shoots, I think the software is going to be faster, the hardware is going to be faster. And I think just having the knowledge of what we've taken from working from home is going to be applied. So I think that's going to at least help boost the film side to our advantage. But at the same time, we've also learned to be able to work with people in different states, that no one has to go to the office and be in the same spot. So I see kind of a collaboration between the two once everything sort of gets back in line. But at the same time, I see kind of a hybrid of what you're saying. It's kind of how I foresee it.
It's kind of like a convergence of the 3 different types of working, from live action filmmaking, animation filmmaking, and video games. It's kind of being driven largely by game engines, but that journey started 20 plus years ago, when in the 90s, video games started becoming more cinematic and trying to tell more cinematic stories within them. And that's led to this natural progression where now we're at a point where you can take workflows that were designed originally for a game, apply it to live action filmmaking or animation filmmaking, but it also goes the other way around. Someone who's traditionally always worked in film can easily jump over to games, because it's all the same kind of work. You're still telling stories, there's still cinematography, there's still performance, and it's blending to become something new and different.
Yeah, I think it's going to be definitely not as challenging, but I feel like somebody asked me once, like, do I foresee like a bunch of like jobs and things going away, because of it? And, Grant was just saying like less people maybe on a production shoot, but maybe there's just a lot more things happening up front as opposed to at the same time as while they're shooting.
Yeah, exactly. Before, where you would go film and you kind of have some concept art of the set and you know roughly what it's going to look like, and then you final it afterwards. Now you got to do that up front.
So the same people are still going to be there. I mean, you're still going to need, people that are, dressing the sets. You're still going to need people that's capturing sound. You're still going to need, and maybe even in some cases more people, because now you have what they call the brain bar, that's running these LED walls, with multiple people sitting at computers helping to make sure the production is running smoothly on the day.
There is a blurred line between, how cinematic filmmaking is and storytelling is told and how video game storytelling unfolds. I think on the technical side, we'll probably, see a hybrid, these work from home solutions and these virtual solutions, not only because the work from home solutions allow us to collaborate with people from all over around the world and aren't just location based, but also, for productions to see that this is a way of filmmaking that works, a way of filmmaking that allows them still not only to plan out their movie to a T. I think, pandemic or not, productions and producers for sure are definitely still going to want to harness, the pre-planning and what they can do ahead of time before you ever get to a live action shoot. And I think that they're still going to want to hold on to those aspects of it now that they're seeing the benefits and advantages that those can bring to their production. The other thing I'm really hoping is that now that we're really laying down cameras virtually and we're able to like plan out a movie completely virtually, that this will, even once everyone's allowed back on set, it'll allow directors and DPs and story artists, it'll allow everyone to really put a lot of time and thought into stories. And we've always had wonderful directors and storytellers, but I hope that with the emergence of these virtual tools, that they'll be able to take these tools and really just dive deeper into stories. And I think what we're going to see is hopefully, some better stories come out of these video game stories, film stories, that just everything can just ferment, ideas can be shared faster and more iterative before you ever roll on a live actor. And that should really just help the story process to really evolve quite quickly at the beginning, so that issues in the story, whether it's continuity or it's, parts not making sense, editing types of things, can really all be ironed out ahead of time and just result in better content.
I think to all that too, as the tools get better and more intuitive, when you begin to take the clunkiness and the original versions of these things and as they evolve, it becomes easier for people to actually use them and adapt to them and actually play with them. And I think that's one thing that's happening right now is we're able to customize, the tools and how someone wants to actually work inside of that world. And I think as other people get more of those intuitive tools, it's going to become easier. And once there's nothing between you and the actual filmmaking process, it should just be a lot more creative.
That's a good point. I think these processes, these tools are empowering directors, not making it more difficult. They're allowing directors to interact much more directly with their film. At least that's my impression of it.
I would agree. I mean, as I said on ETC Ripple Effect, the directors that we had worked with were very new directors. They were young students, and seeing them pick up this technology for the first time and really get involved in their film in a way that they hadn't before, I think was a very valuable experience for them early in their careers. On the flip side, on both, the Batman and the current project that I'm on, working with more seasoned directors, directors with a lot of experience and an incredible, catalog of films, seeing these kinds of directors bring their filmmaking knowledge and expertise to these tools and using them in a way that is different, because every director, every creative has their own process. And we're able to just, as Jess said, customize these tools per the tastes of the creatives that we're working with. So it's really inspiring and very cool to see, on one side, we've got these novice directors that are doing this for the first time. And on the other side, we've got these really experienced creatives, with an incredible history of filmmaking, pick up this new technology and just run with it and make films in the style and context of, in which that we all know and love from these directors, but, utilizing tools to really just forward their vision. It's really quite encouraging to see both sides of that coin.
In some ways, the switch to home has almost made it a more collaborative process.
Yeah.
I know we were all worried switching from the office because you wouldn't be able to go walk by someone's desk and see what they're working on and work with them. But really, it's kind of freed it up. You can sit in a Zoom call with 4 or 5 artists who are all working on stuff and work together, share your screen, even log into the same computer and, work together on something. Even though we're all separated, the work itself is almost more tied together. Plus, we can hire people all over the world, and we're not tied to folks that are in LA. We can work with people anywhere. So it really frees up bringing all the best people for the job onto the project more than historically.
It's certainly changed the way that we interface with the productions. It's changed the way that we interface with each other. I do agree that in some ways it's more collaborative, but I have to say I miss seeing everybody in the office. But, I do think that out of necessity, it caused a lot of people to embrace some of these technologies that maybe were hard to accept beforehand because they represented change, and change represents risk.
Well, Fortnite is a great example. I question if this show would even exist if we hadn't switched to work from home. We're working so closely with Epic, so directly tied in with their cinematics team and their special projects teams, that I imagine before last March, they would have been much more nervous about bringing on this many people on different teams all over the world. And as soon as that door's open for them doing it, they realize, oh, okay, we can work with everyone that we want to.
With the convergence of these tools, we're hiring a lot of people from the game industry. We're hiring people that are newer to the film industry. Sometimes we're hiring very talented people that have spent time learning Unreal Engine and know how to work with some of these newer workflows that even industry veterans aren't up on yet. It's probably worth throwing a shameless plug out there that if there is anyone listening that fits that description, go to halon.com/employment, and we are always hiring and always looking for talented people. That's a pretty good note for us to end this on. Thank you guys for joining, and to everybody in the audience who's joining us, or virtual audience. I want to thank you for coming to our panel. I hope it's been educational.
Hey, Chris, just a quick question. What is that in your behind you? Is that a robot? It looks like a mannequin.
It's an animation doll, articulating animation mannequin.
All right. I have that right behind me, but it's not as big as yours.
You got the little one. I've got the full size one. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it.
I bought it for like $12 at one point. It got used in some, I think it was a Sony commercial. I can't remember, many years ago.
That's great.
It usually just scares people at night.
Yeah, I can see why. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I chose not to sit in my mannequin corner for WonderCon.
Do you have a mannequin corner as well?
I got a few mannequins.
Kristen, you're traveling. You're in London, so you can't show us your mannequin corner.
Bring my poorly articulating mannequin out,
but you do have a nice plant.
I have London.
Nice plant, though. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's fake. It's not mine. None of this is mine. But whatever.
It's been nice for me to be able to have a conversation with all of you guys. I don't get to see you as much as I used to. So work from home, I think, has its pluses and its minuses. One of the minuses is I don't get to interact with everybody on a regular basis. So I've enjoyed having a chance to talk with you.